it's just a little over 10 months ago that Minister Dixon, Dr. Henry, and I came to a podium in Vancouver to announce that COVID-19 had arrived in British Columbia and that our lives would forever be changed. Over that time, extraordinary things have happened, acts of kindness, acts of generosity, as well as abject tragedy in families and in facilities across British Columbia. But through the joy and the tragedy, we have found a way as British Columbians to come together, to be successful when we had to, and to celebrate when the opportunity presented itself, and to stay tight to our units, our family units, when that was the important direction that we were getting. So although COVID-19 has turned our lives upside down, today and this week we have a glimmer of hope that although the end is not in front of us, the beginning of the end may well be. The announcement that vaccines are available and will be coming to British Columbia as early as next week is a sign of optimism for all of us, an opportunity for us to celebrate briefly, but then redouble our efforts as we go into the next number of months as more vaccines become available. Dr. Brown will be talking about the logistics. Dr. Henry will be talking about the epidemiology and the value of the vaccines and how that will transform how we live our lives going forward. But before we get to that place, as in any race, when you see the finish line, you don't stop running, you focus, you dig down deep to find that extra resolve to get to the finish line. That's where we are today. The first rounds of vaccines will begin coming next week. Dr. Brown will be talking about that, as will Dr. Henry. It's a very limited supply, but a good opportunity to have a dry run here in British Columbia as we await the development and approval of further vaccines into the new year. As we see an increase in supply, we're going to see an increase in optimism and an increase in opportunities for us to get back to what is remotely resembling normal. Tomorrow I'll be participating in a First Minister's call with the Prime Minister and other premiers across the country, and the first topic will be the vaccine arrival, how it will be distributed across the country, and what this means for the Canadian Federation going forward. Also on the agenda is a discussion of what's called the Canada Health Transfer. Now, for most people, that is just 3 words strung together. CHT, as it's known acronymistically by the public service. The Canada Health Transfer is perhaps the most important relationship provinces have with our federal government. And when we started our public health care system way back in the 1960s, the deal was 50% Canada, 50% province. Well, over time, that has gone to 80% province and just a little over 20% federal government. So provinces have banded together and called on the federal government to have a national conversation about rebalancing the transfer of dollars into provinces so we can continue to deliver quality health care in British Columbia and in every province across the land. As we go through the second wave of COVID-19 at this holiday season, it's going to be a difficult challenge for all of us. But if we know that in the future, in the near future, in the new year, when we say goodbye forever to 2020 and look hopefully towards 2021 and a new decade of opportunity for all British Columbians, I'm confident that the federal government, who have been spectacular with one-time funding for a range of issues since March, will also join with provinces to reestablish Canada and do some nation building for our public health care system by restoring the Canada Health Transfer to something remotely resembling a partnership. Until all of that comes to pass, we have to be reminded, as Dr. Henry will remind us today, and as we all must be vigilant to keep our hands clean, to ensure that we're physically distancing, to wear masks and do our level best to not engage with people that we don't know in close proximity. That means over the holiday season, we're going to be doing things differently. And I hope all British Columbians will understand that if we make that final commitment now, with the finish line in sight, with vaccines arriving next week and in larger numbers into the new year, we will all get through this as we have to this point in time. Thanks very much for your attention. I know there'll be a lot of questions. I'll pass the microphone over to Dr. Henry.
Thank you, and thank you very much. Today is an important day for everyone in BC because today we are talking about COVID-19 vaccines. Vaccines that are real, that are approved for use here and across our country. These are the vaccines that will save lives. will ease the immense pressure on our healthcare system, and a few days will start to arrive here in BC. I'm very pleased to share our BC Operation Immunize COVID-19 vaccine plan with you today, and the delivery of a vaccine on this size and scale we know is no easy task. It will be the most complex and comprehensive immunization program ever delivered in BC, and we've delivered a few pretty big ones over the last number of years. That's why I'm very happy to be working with my colleague and friend, Dr. Ross Brown, along with Dr. Monica Naus and all of my colleagues at the BC CDC and the many immunization experts across our province and in our health authorities. We will be providing an overview of our approach to receive, distribute, and administer a COVID-19 vaccine and other vaccines in our province. The impact of COVID-19 has, we know, been severe. It has affected all of us. And in response, the global community of scientists have collaborated in ways we never experienced before, with a single purpose in mind: to develop a safe and effective vaccine for the world. And to speed up the process, the clinical trials that would normally happen in sequence were run simultaneously, and the greatest brains around the world were put to this process and to this task. And of course, we had an addition of a lot of money to help support the process. With this quickened time to complete the process, each vaccine manufacturer had to demonstrate clear and substantial scientific and clinical evidence to show that the vaccines they were making were safe, effective, and manufactured to the highest quality. Health Canada in our country and other regulators around the world set the bar high to ensure that any vaccines that came out of this process met those standards, that they were safe, that they worked, and that they were quality vaccines. At which point the vaccine would become available for use. The first one in this country and around the world has been the Pfizer vaccine, which is a new and exciting immunization technology, and that is what was approved here today. It is the same vaccine that was approved in the United Kingdom very recently, and for which the vaccine program started yesterday. We are still learning more about the virus. We're learning more about our immune response to it and how long that response lasts. We're learning how long immunity takes to be achieved and how long after being vaccinated we are protected. But I, along with my colleagues across this country, have full confidence in the vaccines and the processes that have taken us to this point right now. So Canada, as you're probably aware, has ordered COVID-19 or has contracts to purchase COVID-19 vaccines of 7 different manufacturers. The first of these to come to BC will be the Pfizer vaccine that we've heard about, and the second will likely be the Moderna vaccine. And that one is being reviewed by Health Canada right now, and we're hopeful that it will also receive what we call a notice of compliance or a license for use in Canada in the coming weeks. The vaccines, these 2 vaccines, are developed using a new process, and they're called messenger RNA vaccines. That means that we have taken a piece of the genetic code from the virus that helps translate into the spike protein, that little spiky bit on the outside of the virus. And that protein then is produced by our cells, and our immune system responds to that to develop antibodies. And then if we're exposed to the virus, we have those antibodies that attach to it and protect us from becoming ill. That's how this vaccine works. And it's synthetic genetic material, which means that it can be manufactured in large amounts very quickly. These types of vaccines have been worked on for decades for other things like Zika and even influenza and rabies, but this is the first time that it has been manufactured and shown to work. In other words, the vaccine helps us skip the illness and get straight to producing protective antibodies. While the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine that was approved for use, will be available starting next week, it is not yet recommended for use for everybody. These first vaccines are not recommended and haven't been tested in children under the age of 16, so that's important, thankfully. And we know that children are less likely to have COVID or to have serious effects from COVID. They are not approved for use in people who are pregnant, and that's important because we don't yet know their safety in that population. And unfortunately, they're not yet approved for use in people with immunocompromising conditions. And that is something that we are looking at because we know that people whose immune systems are not functioning, whether that's from cancer treatments or other medications they're on, are more at risk of having severe illness from COVID-19. But unfortunately, we do not yet know if these vaccines work in people who are immune compromised and if they're safe. So these are things that we will continue to need to learn. We also know, though, that there are other vaccines being manufactured that will be coming available in the coming months. And some of those are more traditional vaccines that use what we call subunits or proteins, and we know that they can be used safely in people who are immune compromised. So we look forward to having many more tools that we can use. Both the Pfizer and the hopefully coming soon Moderna vaccines require 2 doses to be fully protected, a minimum of 21 days apart, with full immunity being about 7 days after the second dose. However, we do know from the data that was released and that the National Advisory Committee on Immunization has reviewed that we have good protection even after the first dose, after about 14 days. The efficacy or the protection from the Pfizer vaccine and from the Moderna vaccine has been reported to be in the high 90s, so 94, 95%. That means that they can protect most people from having any infection, and they've been very effective at preventing severe illness. And this is really important. This is a breakthrough in terms of the benefit that a vaccine can have. We were hoping for vaccines that were at least 50 to 60% effective. The fact that these ones are in the high 90s is the best that we could hope for in public health when we look at protecting people in our community. And I believe these may revolutionize vaccines for the future, for other respiratory illnesses, for example. And I think it's important to note that these vaccines, the trials were done in people of all ages, including older people, where we sometimes see a reduced immune response. So that is important as well, and in people of multiple different ethnic backgrounds. However, both of these first vaccines need to be transported and stored at sub-zero temperatures. That's because these messenger RNA is a very delicate substance, and it's wrapped in what's called a lipid nanoparticle. So it is a protective coating, but it needs to be frozen to transport safely. And we are in the process now of figuring out how that can be done, and we've had a trial run of the packaging that came into BC just yesterday, and Dr. Brown will talk a little bit more about that. But it needs to be handled very carefully, and it needs ultra-low temperature, so minus 70 to minus 80 freezers, which, as you can imagine, are not things that we have a lot of around. However, we have been planning for this for some of those available here in BC, and we will be using them next week. However, we also are receiving very small doses to start with to make sure that the supply system and the whole mechanism and logistics of how it works can be done and can be done safely. We will be receiving vaccine at just 2 places in British Columbia next week. We will be receiving 2 trays at each of those places, and a tray has about 975 doses each frozen. One of those places will be in the Vancouver Coastal Health Region, and one in the in the Fraser Health Region. As we get our systems underway and we better understand the requirements for the supply chain, we expect to be able to transport vaccine to other locations around the province. And as we move into the coming weeks in December, we will expect to receive, and it changes daily, but we're thinking in the tens of thousands of doses in the coming 2 weeks in December, after December 14th. And then into the first week of January, we expect even more vaccine to arrive, and we have planned planned for expansion to at least 9 sites around the province, and we're working on having 30 sites around the province that are ready and trained to receive these vaccines. And they will have the ultra-low temperature freezers needed on site. I know many people are starting to wonder about when will I get vaccine? And as someone in public health who has an interest in immunization programs for many, many years, this is something that we are all very pleased to be able to talk about. But I do have to warn you, it's going to be a bit of a road yet. Right now, we are only receiving small amounts of vaccine. And like every place in the world, we'll get the vaccine delivered to us sequentially in coming weeks. Eventually, everybody who can and wants to get a vaccine will have access. But to be clear, this will not happen right away. We all need to continue to protect each other by taking those measures that prevent transmission of this virus. Next week, as I said, we'll be getting a small preliminary batch to figure things out, make sure we can do it safely, and we will be focusing on making sure that we can protect as many people as possible in the period of time that we have in the first few weeks and months of this campaign. The process for determining who gets these first doses of vaccine was done using the process that we have through the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, where we have identified priority populations, and these have been agreed upon across the country. And here in BC, we've taken that and looked at what does that mean for us in this province. So we have a BC Immunization Committee that has public health clinicians, pharmacists, nurses, ethicists that help us look at the data and say, who is it that's first in line? This framework will map out a systematic process for our immunization program decision-making and implementation. So we applied that situation and give it the limited amount of vaccines right now. Our priority, as I mentioned, is to save lives. And we know that the lives that are being taken and affected most right now are seniors and elders in long-term care and assisted living. In addition, we need to protect our strained healthcare system so that all of us can get the care we need when we need it. So we look at a number of risk factors as well as the geographically where the virus was affecting people the most. So the first batches in December in these 2 sites will be provided to healthcare workers who work in long-term care and in those key frontline healthcare settings in our acute care hospitals. That's ICUs, emergency departments, and the COVID medical wards. As I mentioned, the Pfizer vaccine requires us to provide the vaccine at the site where it is delivered, and that will be the case for the first few weeks of this program, which means we need to bring people to the vaccine instead of the vaccine to people at this point. We are hopeful that as we get the processes and confidence in how we're transporting the vaccine, we will be able to switch to taking it to people very soon, but it may be the first weeks of January before that is possible. As well, we know that the Moderna vaccine, which hopefully will be approved for use very soon, has less stringent requirements for transport, and that it can be kept at fridge temperatures for a matter of days. That makes it much more easy to transport smaller amounts to long-term care homes for residents, for example, or to some of our more rural or remote communities. But by protecting the healthcare workers who work in long-term care and who work in those critical cares, the critical areas of our hospitals, we are able to protect the residents as well. Starting in later December and into January, we will initiate more widespread rolling delivery of the vaccines and other vaccines as they become available around the province. So by the first week of January, we expect vaccine to be available in all health authorities, likely the Pfizer vaccine, and hopefully Moderna as well. And each health authority will determine the sequencing of healthcare workers in this first population using the same way that we're doing it here on the Lower Mainland. From there, we'll add the next layer into our sequence to include people of advanced age, so people over age 80 in the community, Higher risk communities, like those living in congregate living situations and shelters and places where we know people have a higher risk of severe illness and ending up in hospital, and remote and isolated First Nations communities and Indigenous peoples. By late March, April, our expectation is we will have enough vaccine and likely more different vaccines to expand to include all other frontline workers, including other healthcare workers, police, fire, first responders, people who work in the important essential services like grocery stores, manufacturing, production facilities, transportation, teachers, and others in our system. We'll also be moving down our population range in age increments as vaccine becomes available. It is important to remember, though, this phasing is based on what we're anticipating to be available based on the approval of the vaccines, and as more vaccine supplies become available, that will allow us to accelerate these timeframes. And what we envision, right now we are focused on saving lives, protecting those people most at risk, and we have enough vaccine that we expect to receive between now and the end of March to cover those key populations. And that's about 300 and 380,000 people. We do expect by the end of March and going into the spring, there'll be more vaccine products and more of the vaccines available to more rapidly spread out to people in the community. And I expect that this will happen very rapidly in the spring. And that means we'll have vaccines that can be delivered through those more usual mechanisms that we have through pharmacies, through our family physician offices, through public health clinics. So that's what we have to look forward to. It is at that point when we have vaccine widely distributed in our communities where many people are protected that we will be able to stop this pandemic. That's the phase that we are looking forward to. Right now, we do not have enough vaccine to stop transmission across the province, so our focus is to protect those who are most at risk. I can say with confidence that the vaccines that we have, the one that is approved for use here today, are safe and effective and will save lives. I know many people will be eager to get their vaccine as soon as possible, and like me, have probably been waiting since this pandemic was first declared. I ask you to please be patient and understanding, and please continue to use those layers of protection that keep us all safe until it is your turn. We are not yet through this storm, but our plan has been built to be flexible, and there will be changes along the way, and we will let you know when we know. There will likely be some hiccups, and when they happen, we'll adjust our plan and we'll respond to the circumstances at the time. And we'll continue to update people all along the way. As we approach the winter solstice coming up, the longest night of the year, there is light ahead. And that light is shining a little brighter today. And I think we can all be thankful for that. I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Ross Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the introductions. It has been an honor to work alongside Dr. Henry and Minister Dix. I thank you. And it is an absolute privilege to serve as the incident commander for what we are calling our Immunize BC Operations Centre. It's made up of the team of respected experts to safely and effectively deliver the COVID-19 vaccines to British Columbians. And let me begin with an overview of the logistical planning already underway, and then I'll speak to our phased approach to distributing the COVID-19 vaccines. You've heard many times, and across this country, it's already been said, but it's worth repeating. This is a complex task because of the variables and sensitivities involved in the delivery of the COVID-19 vaccines, which will be happening next week. However, when it comes to immunization programs in British Columbia, this isn't a new task for our public health teams. They have done exceptional work immunizing British Columbians against numerous viruses, including measles, seasonal influenza, and the 2009 H1N1 influenza campaign. We are fortunate that our public health experts will be vaccinating against COVID-19 on a strong backbone of an immunization system that they have developed and refined. When Premier Horgan, Minister Dix, Dr. Henry and I initially discussed the logistics involved, we acknowledged that the COVID-19 program is more complex because of the different vaccines. They'll be arriving at different times and their different characteristics. To do this effectively and safely, we would need to draw on our experts and develop a coordinated and collaborative immunization program. And that's why we created BC's COVID-19 Immunize BC Operations Centre. And the experts supporting the Operations Centre are comprised of members from BC Centre for Disease Control, the Provincial Health Services Authority, including their Health Emergency Management BC members, First Nations Health Authority, Canadian Red Cross, Canadian Armed Forces, leading scientists and ethical advisors, and health ministry leadership, including direct links to the regional health authorities in our province. The Immunize BC Operations Centre brings the experts around the table that have the knowledge and experience to be nimble and to rapidly respond to evolving scenarios. They have teams under them that have great experience in working with immunization and vaccine challenges. And the Immunize BC Operations Centre allows our key players to be coordinated and share information rapidly as the conditions evolve. And this will allow us to inform and advise Minister Dix and Dr. Henry in a timely and coherent manner, using structures and functions that are designed to work in crisis situations. And using the Immunize BC Operations Centre tools and processes to bring out the best in our leadership team, and it allows us to immediately address any glitches along the way. Our primary goal is to ensure our public health system is ready to administer vaccines as they become available. And together, we're working in lockstep with our federal counterparts to receive shipments of the COVID-19 vaccines here in BC. We have met with Major General Fortin, VP of Logistics and Operations for the Public Health Agency of Canada, and have established a relationship with him and his team. This is an important relationship for our Immunize BC Operations Centre members. We are working closely so that we are aligned and can implement contingency plans to mitigate any challenges or disruptions. Dr. Henry has presented the phased approach to the rollout of the vaccine. As she mentioned, over the coming months, we will need to be very patient. Our approach will be slow, steady, and nimble at the beginning and will ramp up as more vaccines become available. I compare this to one of the Royal Canadian Navy ships slowly and methodically leaving Esquimalt Harbour, increasing speed and maneuverability as she heads to sea to complete her mission. Our mission includes accepting the vaccine, storage, delivery, distribution, training of staff, administration, administering, and data collection, all of which is a work in progress as we speak. Yesterday, we did a simulation exercise to prepare for rolling out the vaccine initially at the 2 locations referred to. This dry run helped us validate the plans for arrival and distribution of the vaccine and allows us to begin to iron out any of the logistical challenges before we distribute the vaccines. Our immediate focus right now is on the first phase, which will see the vaccine distributed to 2 centres in Vancouver Coastal Health and Fraser Health Authorities. 2 clinics are being set up within these centres where the doses will be administered. Health authorities will begin to canvass, they already have begun to canvass their key acute care staff, long-term care and assisted living staff, and work with the 2 clinics to book the staff for scheduled appointments for the vaccines over the coming weeks. From this initial rollout over the next 2 weeks, we will adapt and scale up to 7 additional vaccine sites throughout the province by late January. And with the arrival of Moderna, as Dr. Henry said, we will be able to expand our ability to administer the vaccine to more British Columbians across the province. In conclusion, this has been a long journey for all of us. In one way or another, the pandemic has taken its toll on us all. While we can see the end of the COVID-19 pandemic is on the horizon, we have a lot of work ahead of us. We will be steady, deliberate, and cautious so that we get this right, so that every British Columbian can have timely access to a COVID-19 vaccine. We consider this a no-fail mission, and we're going to get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have to say, I've been waiting for this day for a long time, and I think it's going to be even more exciting next week when we start putting vaccines into people's arms.